Hi, my name is Allie, and I'm a hospice nurse. For those of you who don't know, I've been doing the thing for about 7 years now, and this is my story about being a hospice nurse. It definitely is my home. I love my patients. I love doing my job. I love the team that I work with. I'm very grateful that I get to work with the people that I do on a daily basis. And then COVID hit. We all heard mostly, obviously, about how nursing was affected in the hospitals because they had the critical patients, they had the COVID units, the ICUs, etc. They were proning people, whatnot. But we didn't really hear much about the home health or hospice front and how nurses were dealing with that. So I'm here to tell you a little bit about how it went and how it is going as a hospice nurse working through COVID. So let's start. I think one thing that I miss the most about pre-COVID times is having patients being able to see my face. A lot of our patients are memory care patients, and a smile is just inviting and it shows you're friendly, and that is a big deal for them. So it's very hard going onto memory care units when they've had COVID outbreaks and you have to be all gowned up and go in and hope that they react to you, in a way so you can do your nursing assessment and do what you have to do for them. Gowning up for us in the home health and hospice field is a lot different than in a hospital. We don't have any boxes or anything over the door with PPE hanging. We keep our PPE in our car. We have to take it with us, and we gown up before we go in. So sometimes you would see us walking in neighborhoods in PPE, like, hey, here's your friendly little neighborhood reminder of the fact that we're still in a pandemic. And I remember walking by houses like 4th of July weekend last year, gowned up in PPE, ready to go into people's homes who had COVID, and people would be having giant 4th of July parties. And it's kind of was a slap in the face because here I was sweating my butt off, praying to the high heavens that I did not bring this home to my family. A lot of those homes can get very hot. They're not well ventilated like a hospital. We didn't have that controlled environment, and that was a huge factor into how much stress COVID had put on our field. We also did have an effect when it came to lack of supplies, lack of PPE. Everybody was affected, but the hospitals obviously were priority, and we kind of fell below that. It was very hard. At one point, I was buying a lot of my own supplies for more than I'd like to admit, just to make sure I came home safe to my family and to also keep my job. So, yeah. Another thing that people really didn't take into account was when home health and hospice nurses were going into COVID homes, it would literally be an entire home of people with COVID. There were no visitor restriction policies. We were allowed to have people flying in from what they would call the high-risk states. There's not that now. Those types of places where they had a high amount of COVID being transmitted in the community. Obviously, we wouldn't want anybody to not come and visit their loved one at end of life. So that was another factor that we had to take into account. So, yeah. Going into literally an entire home full of COVID, or maybe it was your patient's loved one or their caretaker who had COVID. And I mean, at one point, I think we required families. A lot of places tried to require families to wear masks while we were in the homes, but you can't always get a perfect mask wearer, whereas in the hospital at one point I think they had no visitors allowed, so that was very controlled. But we never had any such policy. The only policies most of us had in place were the families had to wear masks. And, you know, that has since been brought down versus in other healthcare places, you have to have a mask to enter. So going into a home where everybody around you had COVID, it was challenging. And having to also take off PPE outside people's home, you know, coming out of apartment buildings, and we had to carry around trash bags to put our PPE in after, have like a specific designated spot. And then we had to ask the families to throw it away. We weren't allowed, obviously, to take PPE with us that's contaminated. I can't say that's how all agencies did it, though. I did hear from, unfortunately, a few hospice nurses where they said that their agency had them carry it with them in their car, which is uncomfortable. You know, and another factor is like the bathroom issues. It was a huge issue because when COVID was at its peak, when it first started, a lot of places restricted bathrooms, and that affected us. A lot of places were closed. So that's when I got my first kidney stone. It was during COVID because not only did I not have time to stop, but there wasn't a place easily accessible to stop either. So I would have really had to go out of my way to find a bathroom, and we don't have time for that during our day. So that was an issue. We have since pushed past the bathroom issue. All of that kind of adding to our day was not great. It definitely added length to work. That was lengthy regardless. Trying to also plan things like transporting patients to hospice houses or respite care, because depending on where they were coming from, some places would not accept patients at that time from assisted livings, depending on the status, because of the fact that COVID was transmitting very, very high transmission rates in those types of communities. And we also had to have a list of transmission rates throughout the communities that we were going into. You know, if they had above a certain level, we had to wear PPE in the home regardless of COVID status. We felt sort of protected at that time. At the beginning, I don't think we felt that way. I don't think any of us in healthcare felt that way, that we were protected. We went to work every single day praying, hoping if you don't pray, they don't get COVID and just become a number for a job. As much as we all love our jobs, none of us are martyrs. And COVID definitely changed a lot of us. Some for the better, some for the worse. Some people decided they didn't want to do nursing anymore. A lot of people had I shouldn't say a lot of people, but some people had the mindset, well, why does it matter if they get COVID if they're on hospice? Because that's not what they're on hospice for, which is their disease prognosis. That changes their trajectory of the time that they could have had left. And it might hasten their death. It might make it more uncomfortable for them. It might make it so that they don't get to die at home where they want to. In the end of it, they don't get their wishes fulfilled for their journey and end of life. Not easy for the caregivers who also might be suffering from the same thing to also care for their loved one. Those are all things that I tried to educate people on as to why we didn't want hospice patients getting COVID. I don't know if people realize what it's like to witness like literally half of a memory care unit die because of COVID. That's never happened before. It's never happened before. It was harder to kind of witness the nation kind of deeming these people expendable. Our World War II heroes, these were our homemakers, these were our Rosie Riveters of the time, an entire patient population. And it's not just the older population too, it's all of my immunocompromised patients, and terminally ill patients who truly, truly just wanted to live out the rest of their lives, and they couldn't because nobody really cared about their life to take. And it was kind of sad to see in some of their eyes, well, I have to hunker down again because if I get this, it's going to really, really make me suffer. Yeah, that was hard. The photos with the lines around my face from my N95 or in PPE, it truly didn't grasp what was weighing on us every single day. I had to kind of MacGyver our way. A lot of us had to MacGyver stuff because when we go into COVID homes with PPE on, we can't bring anything with us. So the patient has to have like blood pressure cuff or pulse ox or thermometer within the home that we can use, because obviously it's considered when you're on a contact precaution, because obviously they don't want anything transmitting from patient to patient, and we don't either in the home health field. So it was very hard going in. We don't have a computer. We couldn't take our laptop in with us. So it was just kind of, that was hard. I signed up to work in a safe environment where PPE was a plethora of availability of PPE, wipes, and everything. When you go through nursing school and you go into contact precaution rooms, it is not like going into a home full of people. Loved ones around the end of life. It was, again, another risk that we put ourselves in front of. And also thinking about adding into the mix the fact that we used our personal cars to go from COVID home to COVID home, COVID home to COVID home. Imagine that. I got my kid's car seat in the back. And a lot of you are probably like, take it out. Have you ever taken out a car seat? I'm by myself. I just covered it with a plastic car seat cover during the beginning of it, like the peaks for sure. Anyway, yeah, taking your own personal car and like wiping it down at the end of the day. Oh, our poor car got like the worst of it. My steering wheel is like, I tried to use steering wheel covers at some point. Those things are slippery. 0 out of 10. Don't recommend. Yep. Having to make sure that your car's ready to be a family car to go get your kids from school after you've just had someone coughing in your face. Which is why I, again, put the little hand washing system in the back of my car, because that saved my life. I could literally wash my hands after I did my note and everything like that. Well, my hands were good to go. So what is COVID like now in the world of hospice nursing? COVID in our world, our list is still growing of patients who are on COVID precautions, whether that be exposed, symptomatic, positive, family member positive, exactly. And when a family member is positive, but maybe your patient's negative, we still have to go see the patient. We still have to go into long-term care, assisted living facilities, etc. But those places all have mask policies. Oh, and now we have monkeypox. I am so over this. So yeah, we still have COVID patients. We still have patients' family members who are COVID positive or still on precautions in some people's homes. When we go into facilities, obviously we mask. We don't have to gown up like we used to. When we went into certain long-term care facilities at one point, most of them wanted us to gown up, obviously, and we would, because those places had very high transmission rates. We're going to have to protect ourselves and everyone else, because people don't realize we're going to go see patients after that are in homes, that are perfectly healthy, that have not had touch with the outside world because of their terminal prognosis in a while. So we have to be careful for them, which is why I MacGyvered up my fancy schmancy hand washing machine thingy-mabobber. Hard to find a sink. And you have to think about cross-contamination. So when let's say we wash our hands in a person's home, how are you going to do that without cross-contaminating and recontaminating your hands by touching the doorknob to leave? To sum it all up, I don't think any of us in home health or in hospice, I particularly work in hospice, are ever going to forget the summers of what it's like to be going in and out of a ton of homes with PPE on. Not ventilated areas. We were not in a ventilated area. And having to hike up and down streets in full PPE because you had to park your car all the way down at the other end of the road. Just a sight to see. I don't know. I hope that this changed the face of nursing in a lot of ways, but I wanted to make sure that home health and hospice were not forgotten. So, yeah. The amount of days that I became what I would say was pretty dang dehydrated to do our thing We had to continue nursing in the home, at the bedside, being the MacGyvers that we are. Really uncontrolled situation during a pandemic. Imagine having to insert a Foley on some lady who's in a reclining chair, PPE, in a home that's like 75 degrees. We're still out there. We're still continuing to nurse regardless. And you'll still see us out and about in the community, but we're kind of just like Batman. Bat signal is sent out and we come a-calling, and nobody really sees us. And I don't think we were truly accounted for during this pandemic. Like, it was really hard to do it, but you know, we're still not out of the woods for sure. But I appreciate you guys listening to my story. I know a lot of hospice nurses went through what I went through. You kind of felt less than because of the type of nursing that you do. We shouldn't. We were just as much nurses as anybody else. Just doing it out there in the community. Free balling it. Boots on the ground out there. Godfather Star died at age 82. I swear, I wear glasses. I've never seen The Godfather. But I want to let all the hospice nurses and home health nurses, not even just the nurses, the home health everybody, the hospice everybody, that you guys were not forgotten. I didn't forget you. You guys are doing an amazing job with the little that you have, and going into these uncontrolled situations. Definitely not like Sim Man in school where you learn your skills. Nope, not necessarily a bedside table to work around, to put your stuff down. At some points in our visits, and everybody should know this, a lot of the times during our visits, home health and hospice workers don't sit because we don't want to put our tuchus on anything in the home, especially in a COVID home. Or we didn't. If I put my bum down, I put chucks, or I'll sit on the same chucks that my bag's on. Sometimes the bag never even leaves the shoulders of the worker. They stay on the whole time, depending on what you got to do. So we had to do what we had to do to get by and to make sure that not only we're safe, but we're also not cross-contaminating from patient to patient. It's not like we're going room to room. We're going home to home in our cars. There's a lot of things that can get cross-contaminated there. We don't have a separate place to eat either. We eat in our cars. Just think about it. Because parks were closed, a lot of things were closed. Anything that was common area, closed. Not like I would have wanted to eat inside at that point anyway. But yeah, something to think about. My name is Nurse Allie, and I'm a hospice nurse. Some call me Hospice Nurse Allie, some call me Big Al. Don't call me that. I take that one back. Like and subscribe if you like my content. I do sometimes different things, but again, most of it is centered around hospice nursing. But this is my take on hospice nursing during COVID-19. Have a good day.